I chose Ethan Frome for my exhibit because of my interest in Edith Wharton. As a Massachusetts native, I'd always enjoyed that novel in particular because of the familiarity of its rural New England setting and for its representation of explosive emotionality beneath taciturn Yankee surfaces. The purpose of this video is to share with you some of the interesting things, bibliographic and otherwise, that I learned over the course of working on this project. For those of you who aren't familiar with the story, it's actually summed up pretty nicely by the Mark 520 field. Story of a man torn between his joyless marriage to one woman and his lustful desire for another. I think Ethan would approve of the economy of words. Of course, that description doesn't come anywhere near expressing the full emotional intensity of this short novel. Edith Wharton was best known as an astute chronicler of turn of the 20th century high society. Ethan Frome displays her characteristic keen discernment of the complexities of human relationships, but in a very different geographic setting and social milieu from most of her work. The novel first appeared serially in 1911 in Scribner's Magazine, then was published by Charles Scribner's Sons later that same year. The primary print edition I was working with was a 1912 reprint of the first edition. Since it's a product of the modern machine printing era, my edition's construction was pretty straightforward. To be honest, it's a bit dull. There were times when I was a little sorry that I hadn't chosen for this project a much older book with a more convoluted printing history and collation pattern. However, I did run into one printing anomaly. The principal bibliography of Wharton's works identifies an error on page 135 of some early editions, where the word wearily was imperfectly printed. This was explained as type batter, the result of the type gradually wearing out or becoming damaged during printing. In fact, Wharton complained in a letter to Charles Scribner that the book was very badly printed. I have never seen so many defective letters and various typographical untidiness in any book you have published for me. As I visited different libraries over the course of this project and checked out their editions of Ethan Frome, it became a kind of bibliographic treasure hunt for me to turn eagerly to page 135 to see if the battered word appeared. Ethan Frome was critically well received and modestly successful in its day, but its popularity really surged in the 1930s. I discovered that the novel had been published as an Armed Services edition in 1942. This was a series of more than 1,000 pocket-sized paperback books, fiction and nonfiction, economically printed during World War II for the entertainment of soldiers serving overseas. Most were unabridged, and they were often bound on the short side of the text block because of the pulp magazine presses used. Learning how to use the breadcrumb trails of scholarly reference materials was another valuable experience. By following bibliographic citations, I was led to several interesting sources. One was a 1904 newspaper article from the town near Wharton's western Massachusetts home about a fatal sledding accident similar to the one that is pivotal in Ethan Frome. Another was the original manuscript draft of the story in French that Wharton wrote as an exercise to practice her French language skills. I apologize for the fuzziness of these images. I was trying out my library's new ScanDoc technology, but only with limited success. I also learned that the people who work in rare book rooms are really welcoming and helpful, and are happy to have you there making use of the items in their collection. I learned to wash my hands before going in, since, as we now know, white gloves are not best practice, and to be sure my computer and mobile phone batteries are fully charged, since outlets may be scarce.